air in the abandoned hall is thick, pressing. A single, weak flashlight beam cuts through the dust, illuminating peeling wallpaper and cracked plaster. Every creak, every groan of the old building feels amplified. Then, a distinct, wet whisper drifts from behind a barely ajar door at the far end. It isn't the wind, it's something else, something breathing, waiting. Welcome to Room Beneath, where we unearth the chilling truths hidden just beneath the surface. Before we begin, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories. The desolate apartment building loomed under a bruised sky, its rain-streaked windows like vacant eyes. Liam and Chloe stepped out of their car, the air heavy with unspoken apprehension. Apartment 4B, the last known address of the vanished honeymooners, stood ajar, a silent invitation to the unknown. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light from the grimy hallway, illuminating the pervasive chill emanating from within. They exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them before stepping into the pervasive chill of the forgotten space, each breath fogging slightly in the cold air. Inside, the apartment was a chilling time capsule. Untouched furniture draped in ghostly white sheets, a half-empty, dusty coffee mug on a small wooden table. Clothes still hanging in the closet, a faint scent of stale air and something metallic. It felt as if the inhabitants had just stepped out for a moment that had stretched into an eternity. Liam pulled out his bright LED flashlight, its beam cutting through the pervasive gloom, while Chloe, ever meticulous, began photographing every unsettling detail with her professional DSLR camera. As Chloe meticulously photographed a dusty vanity, her gaze drifted to a loose floorboard beneath a threadbare rug. "Liam, look," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam knelt, his worn leather-bound notebook slipping from his grip as he focused on the anomaly. With a grunt, he pried the floorboard open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, nestled amongst old yellowed letters and faded photos, was a small, intricately carved wooden box. Its surface was adorned with strange, unsettling symbols neither of them recognized, and a faint, metallic, ancient scent seemed to emanate from within. With a profound shiver that traced its way down his spine, Liam carefully opened the box. Not jewels or money, but a single dried, dark red flower pressed between two yellowed, brittle pages. Beside it lay a tarnished silver locket. But it was the pages that truly chilled them to the bone. A crude, childlike drawing of a glamping tent surrounded by distorted, shadowy figures with too many limbs, and a single frantic word scrawled repeatedly in a desperate hand. "It watches." As the word echoed silently in the stale air, the apartment grew impossibly cold, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to emanate from the very walls, making their skin crawl with an icy dread. The chilling whisper seemed to coil around them, a ghostly presence in the suddenly suffocating silence. Liam, his hand still trembling slightly from opening the box, clutched the faded pages with the disturbing drawing and the frantic "It watches." Chloe's eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and journalistic intrigue, darted from the crude imagery to the pressed, dark red flower. What kind of symbols are these, Liam? She breathed, her voice barely a whisper. The apartment's cold deepened, a tangible weight pressing down, making every shadow seem to writhe with unseen menace. They knew, instinctively, they had stumbled onto something far more sinister than a simple missing persons case. Shaken but resolute, they gathered their findings. The ancient symbols on the wooden box, the unique properties of the dark red flower, and the desperate plea on the page demanded deeper investigation. "This isn't just about a vanished couple anymore, Chloe," Liam stated, his voice hushed, as he carefully placed the items into a protective evidence bag. "This is about what they found, or what found them." Chloe nodded, her mind already racing through research avenues. "We need to hit the archives, Liam. Local history, botany, folklore. Someone, somewhere, must recognize these symbols or that flower." The oppressive atmosphere of the apartment clung to them even as they packed to leave, a silent promise that the secrets they had unearthed were far from contained. Hours blurred into a whirlwind of research at the dimly lit town library. Ancient texts on regional flora, local historical society documents, and obscure folklore journals filled their table. Finally, Chloe gasped, her finger tracing a faded illustration in a thick, leather-bound volume. "Liam, look! It's the flower and the symbols, almost identical!" The text spoke of a forgotten local cult, the Whispering Bloom, who believed a rare carnivorous plant thriving in the region's remote glades was a conduit to an ancient, malevolent entity. Rituals were performed at certain sacred glamping sites, particularly during the full moon, the same time the honeymooners vanished. A cold dread settled over them, connecting the dots in a terrifying tapestry. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows as they drove towards the glamping site, a place now shrouded in sinister legend. The coordinates led them deep into the dense, whispering woods, the GPS signal weakening with every mile. The air grew colder, the silence deeper, punctuated only by the crunch of their tires on the gravel path. "Are you sure about this, Liam?" Chloe asked, her voice tight with apprehension, her grip on her camera instinctively tightening. He met her gaze, his own jaw set. "We have to know, Chloe, for them." As they rounded a final bend, the car headlights cut through the encroaching darkness, revealing a clearing. There, nestled ominously amongst towering ancient trees, stood the tattered remains of several glamping tents, one eerily similar to the crude drawing, its canvas ripped and flapping like a spectral flag in the rising wind. A faint, almost imperceptible metallic scent, disturbingly familiar, wafted towards them from the dark woods. Stepping out of the car, the silence of the clearing was immediately unsettling, broken only by the mournful flapping of the ripped tent canvas. The metallic scent, faint before, now clung to the frigid air, sharp and coppery. Liam, his hand automatically going to his worn leather-bound notebook, shone his bright LED flashlight across the eerie scene. Chloe, her professional DSLR camera already raised, began to document the tattered remains. her gaze sweeping from the skeletal trees to the ominous glamping tents. This place felt ancient, malevolent, and terribly wrong, each gust of wind a ghostly whisper. They approached the largest tent, its entry flap ripped away like a gaping maw. Inside, the air was heavy with decay, the metallic tang even more pronounced. The ground was disturbed, not by animals, but by something else. In the center, a crude circle of stones surrounded a patch of dark, dried earth. Embedded within the soil were several more of the deep red, brittle flowers, almost black in the failing light. And amidst them, a single, tarnished silver earring, unmistakably one of the honeymooners from a photo they'd seen. A wave of nausea washed over Chloe as Liam's flashlight illuminated the horrifying tableau. As Liam carefully photographed the earring, a low, guttural growl vibrated through the ground, seemingly from deep within the surrounding woods. It wasn't an animal sound they recognized. It was something ancient, primal, and filled with a chilling intelligence. The metallic scent intensified, now almost overwhelming, making their throats burn. The air grew impossibly heavy, pressing down on them, and the shadows cast by Liam's flashlight seemed to stretch and writhe, elongating into distorted, impossible shapes. Chloe instinctively pressed closer to Liam, her eyes wide, scanning the impenetrable darkness beyond the tent entrance. The growl faded, replaced by an even more horrifying sound, a faint, wet, dragging noise from directly behind the tent. Liam spun around, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, revealing not a creature, but a section of the tent's rear wall. There, amidst the torn canvas, a dark, viscous substance pulsed slowly, a deep, unsettling reddish black like clotted blood. From its sickening surface, a pale, segmented tendril, slick and glistening, slowly retracted back into the fabric, leaving behind a fresh, grotesque impression of a human hand. The implications hit them like a physical blow. The glamping site wasn't just a ritual ground, it was a feeding ground. And whatever it was still here, lurking in the shadows. The pale tendril's retraction left an imprint of dread that pulsed with the viscous substance on the tent wall. Liam, his bright LED flashlight beam shaking, recoiled, Chloe letting out a choked gasp beside him. The metallic tang in the air was now overpowering, thick like blood, suffocating them. Every shadow in the tattered tent seemed to deepen, to take on menacing forms, as if the very darkness itself was alive and watching. A primal fear, far beyond anything they'd encountered, seized them, urging them to flee, but a morbid curiosity held them rooted to the spot, desperate to understand. "We need to get out of here," Chloe finally managed, her voice hoarse. But Liam was already moving, drawn by an invisible force towards the pulsing horror. He cautiously reached out with his gloved hand, careful not to touch the substance, inspecting the torn canvas around it. His flashlight beam revealed more than just the viscous residue. Embedded in the fabric, almost absorbed by it, was a small, ornate button, unmistakably from the honeymooners' camping gear, partially dissolved. It was a terrifying confirmation. This wasn't just a site of ritual, but a place of consumption. The tent was a living, breathing trap. A sudden, sharp crack echoed from the ancient trees outside, followed by a chorus of whispers that seemed to rise and fall with the wind, calling their names. The air within the tent grew colder, the shadows outside twisting into grotesque, fleeting figures that darted between the tree trunks. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with a low thrum, as if the very earth was awakening. The red, brittle flowers in the stone circle pulsed faintly, a macabre heartbeat. This wasn't merely an abandoned glamping site. It was a pulsating organism, responsive to their intrusion, actively closing in. The whispers intensified, morphing from their names into a cacophony of distorted, desperate pleas. "Help! Us!" they seemed to moan from all directions. Then, the vibrant green moss covering the ancient tree trunks nearest the tent began to ripple and shift, revealing not wood, but a series of dark, impossibly wide eyes that slowly blinked open, fixated on them. The ground vibrated violently, and the tent poles groaned under an unseen pressure. As Liam raised his flashlight, Chloe screamed. A root-like appendage, slick and dark, burst through the tent floor between them, coiling upwards with terrifying speed, aiming straight for Liam's leg. The root-like appendage, slick and dark, erupted from the earth with a terrifying speed, directly between Liam and Chloe, coiling upwards, aiming for Liam's leg. Chloe's scream, a raw sound of pure terror, pierced the suffocating air, echoing the violence of the entity's attack. Liam, reacting on instinct, threw himself backwards, scrambling away from the lashing, predatory tendril. The tent, already weakened, groaned audibly, its tattered canvas ripping further as unseen forces pressed in from all sides, the entire structure groaning like a living thing in agony. The tendril lashed out again, missing Liam by inches as he desperately tried to regain his footing. The whispers outside intensified, becoming a chilling cacophony of distorted pleas and guttural gurgles, as if the very air was screaming. Chloe, shaking but determined, instinctively raised her heavy DSLR camera, swinging it like a weapon at the encroaching root, a desperate attempt to fend off the sentient horror. The ground beneath them convulsed violently, and the remaining tent poles buckled, threatening to collapse the entire structure and bury them alive in its living embrace. They were trapped, and the entity was closing in. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Liam grabbed Chloe's arm, yanking her towards the nearest section of ripped canvas. They tore through the fragile material, bursting out of the dying tent and into the hostile clearing. But the forest offered no refuge. The ancient trees surrounding them were now fully awake, their dark, impossibly wide eyes glowing with a faint, malevolent red light fixated on them. The ground beneath their feet ceased its internal tremor, instead erupting with a sickening squelch as more thick, dark roots like grasping claws exploded from the forest floor, quickly encircling them, cutting off any escape path. Cornered, their breath ragged and hearts pounding, Liam and Chloe found themselves trapped in a tightening circle of grasping roots. The whispers swelled into an unbearable chorus of anguished screams, a symphony of torment that seemed to emanate from the very air, from the trees, from the ground itself. Then, with a terrifying groan that vibrated through their bones, the earth directly in front of them began to tear open, a gaping maw of soil and entangled roots forming. From its depths, a profound, guttural thrumming began, accompanied by an overwhelming, metallic, coppery scent. A colossal, unseen presence, heralded only by an ever-growing, monstrous shadow, began to stir and rise, its formless terror consuming the encroaching darkness. The earth groaned, not just soil and roots, but something far older, far more terrible, tore itself free from the glade. A colossal, pulsating mass, vaguely humanoid but grotesquely distorted, coalesced from the darkness. Tendrils of dripping, reddish-black viscous substance slithering over its form. Its surface seemed to shimmer, reflecting the malevolent red eyes of the trees, and from its depths the chorus of anguished screams intensified, now undeniably the voices of its victims, echoing with their final moments. Liam and Chloe stood frozen, their faces illuminated by the faint, unholy glow, staring into the abyss of true horror. The creature, if it could be called that, emitted a deafening shriek that wasn't sound, but pure agony ripping through their minds. It wasn't just consuming bodies, it was consuming souls, their despair fueling its monstrous existence. As it fully emerged, Liam's flashlight beam caught horrifying details. The faint, translucent outlines of human faces pressed into its pulsating flesh, eyes wide with eternal terror, mouths open in silent screams. One face, clearer than the others, bore a striking resemblance to the vanished honeymooner, Sarah, her expression a grotesque mask of torment. The metallic scent became unbearable, a taste of blood and fear in their mouths. Chloe, despite her terror, saw a flicker of defiance in Liam's eyes. "The flower, Liam, the book said it was a conduit. Destroy it!" she screamed over the psychic assault. With newfound resolve, Liam fumbled for the silver pen in his worn leather-bound notebook, his hands shaking. The entity roared, a wave of pure psychic force that sent them stumbling backwards, the ground erupting with more grasping roots, attempting to impale them. The Whispering Bloom cult believed the plant was a gateway, but perhaps it was also its weakness, a fragile link to its monstrous power. Liam, ignoring the roots tearing at his clothes, managed to locate the original dark red flower nestled amongst the stones, now pulsing with a sickening black light. He plunged the silver pen into its withered petals, a desperate, last-ditch effort. The entity shrieked, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of reality, and the entire glade convulsed violently. The ground beneath Liam and Chloe's feet gave way, plunging them into the earth as the monstrous form above them began to writhe and collapse, dragging everything down into a rapidly forming abyssal maw, leaving only the deafening echo of eternal screams. For more chilling tales and mysteries, remember to like this video, subscribe to Room Beneath, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next stories.